A very big hello to all my dear students. So, we come to question number 1 first. So, when you talk about the question number 1, what is the investigation of choice for Best disease? It is a macular dystrophy, right? Which is full name is Best vitelliform dystrophy. Okay. So, mainly it is a dystrophy of what? What have you learnt with me, all of you? It is a dystrophy of retinal pigment epithelium. And if it is a dystrophy of retinal pigment epithelium, tell me yourself, if this is dystrophy of RPE, then what is the choice of investigation? This is EOG. So, our answer here is electrooculogram, right? Okay. So, dystrophy of RP, what is the other name? We are going to have the questions for that topic also. That is your Stargardt's disease. These are the two RP dystrophies that we study for our PG entrance. One is your Best vitelliform dystrophy and one is Stargardt's disease. Okay, so here I think it was very simple. Best, it is a dystrophy of RP. So, the choice of investigation is EOG. Now, a little bit more about these investigations. So, what are the options written here? ERG, multifocal ERG, VEP and EOG. So, these are all electrodiagnostic tests of the retina. We all know this. Okay, coming to first of all, Best disease, how does it present? So, if I focus on the exam questions, this has been your exam question, that this lipofuscin deposition is in the form of egg yolk pattern, right? So, we call it egg yolk deposition. What have you learned next in the presentation? So, initially again this is mainly presented in early decade. The vision was good for some time and it is later in the disease the vision drops suddenly, right? So, initially it is an egg yolk appearance. Slowly there is partial reabsorption. Can you have a look at this? This is a partial reabsorption here and this is going to lead to, what is this appearance? Pseudo hypopion, right? So, it is a pseudo hypopion, right? So, this pseudo hypopion appearance of Best disease and then this is the vitelliruptive stage. So, once there is a vitelliruptive stage, now your vision is going to drop, which is called what appearance? We call it scrambled egg appearance, right? Are we revising together? So, this is what is scrambled egg appearance. This is the vitelliruptive stage and what will be the last stage? After this comes your atrophic stage. So, it is in this scrambled appearance stage. So, we will write it is atrophic stage. So, this is the stage where the vision goes less than 6/60, right? Okay. So, we all know this is mainly of course genetic problem. Now, we talk about this investigation, coming to the investigations on what they have asked you. So, if you look at this one, what is this you are looking at is electroretinogram. Everyone, let us revise ERG. What have we learned together? That there is an A wave. A wave is corresponding to photoreceptors is an exam question. As in exam, B wave, B for B, easy to learn, B for B, bipolar cells, right? So, always remember there is another question, A wave is a negative wave, okay. So, it is a negative wave. Where, what is the investigation of choice in retinitis pigmentosa, which is mainly dystrophy of rods and cones, then we answer ERG. So, this is mainly the investigation of choice in retinitis pigmentosa, isn't it? Okay. And which are the ways which are diminished here? Many of you make a mistake, so I am mentioning both A and B. So, this has also been your exam question, both A and B waves will be diminished, are decreased in amplitude. Okay. So, this was about your ERG. Then we talk about electrooculogram. What else they have asked you? Of course, it is an investigation of choice for RP dystrophy. What is the next thing? It is mainly the light peak. It is the ratio of light peak upon dark trough, right? Light peak upon dark trough. And what is this light peak upon dark trough known as? What is that called? This is what is called. What is this light peak upon dark trough? Please type your answers. Known as, we call it, this is another very important exam question, Arden ratio. So, these are all INICET questions only. Arden ratio, what is that, right? What is the normal ratio? Normal Arden ratio? Yes. So, if it is less than 0.5, what do you call it? Best 1.85, yes. And anything less than 1.5 is what is seen in Best disease. Make this correction. So, this is what is Best disease. All are exam questions. 1.85 normal ratio, less than 1.5 in Best disease. And then another question that they have asked you, again an INICET question, when do you call it as a flat EOG? Flat EOG will be less than 1.25, right? So please keep these questions in mind. So that was one, and so many things around this. So this topic is important for your this exam. Okay, we come to the next question. A laborer working in construction site had tuna. So many times they have asked you this. In so many, this is a repeated question. So whenever you talk about chemical injury, tuna is alkali. So whenever this is in your eye, what should always be the first step is copious irrigation with double eversion of the lid. You can double evert it with Desmarais retractor, right? So this will be irrigation with normal saline. Now we will revise something more here because it is asked. First of all, have a look. So this is a case, what happens when there is a chemical injury is limbal ischemia, right? So when there is a limbal ischemia, what is mainly being damaged is damage of stem cells, you know? Limbal stem cells are damaged. When there is a damage of the limbal stem cells, naturally, what is the role of limbal stem cells? All the epithelial lining of the cornea is regenerating from these cells, which will not happen, and slowly even conjunctiva, which is not normally growing over the cornea, starts growing over the cornea. You know? So these are some of the changes that will happen when there is a damage of the limbal stem cells. Okay, so suddenly when I am talking about all this, I remember one more INICET question here. What is the stem cell marker? They have asked you, I think this is, you have to learn ABCG2. Okay, so the stem cell marker, corneal stem cell markers here is this. This was also your exam question. Another thing around this that we need a revision about is treatment. Of course, the first is always a copious irrigation. But if we have to give antibiotics, there is inflammation, you have to treat the uveitis with cycloplegics. Do we give steroids? Important, make a cue, yes, but only for initial 7 days. Why not? Because it will reduce or inhibit the healing process. It reduces collagen synthesis. But to control inflammation, you can give it for initial 7 days. Ascorbic acid, yes, again it promotes collagen synthesis and improves healing. Citrate has been one of your very important INICET questions. Citrate mainly actually binds with the extracellular calcium, right? And it chelates that extracellular calcium and hence inhibits the collagenase. So it is helping in again healing. So we remember these, don't forget the cues, wherever I am making the cues are very, very important. I said ABCG2 is the stem cell marker, ABCG2. Points around this question that should be kept in mind. So what I am trying to convey, this topic, again many questions around this topic are coming in the exam and it is a repeated question. Okay. We come to, of course, let's finish the topic here, that what else you give. You have learned with me already that chemical injury, even anticollagenase or collagenase inhibitors are also acetylcholine and tetracycline. Both can also be used. But don't forget about how much time steroids are used. Second point is about citrate. And of course, copious irrigation. Every year they ask you something like this. Surgical treatment, just to finish the list, we should have a look at what can be done. So once there is a limbal cell ischemia, we can go for advancement of Tennant's capsule, limbal cell transplantation, amniotic membrane grafting. And if the scarring has been already formed, there is symblepharon, naturally we have to cut, but if we only cut and leave it, it is going to reoccur. Therefore, you have to put a graft, either it is a conjunctival graft or it is a mucous membrane grafting. Got it? So, we will just keep all these things in mind. Surgical treatment, again revising with you all, limbal cell transplantation, amniotic membrane grafting can be done, and if the symblepharon has been formed, we have to treat accordingly, cut the bands and do a mucous membrane grafting or conjunctival grafting. Okay, so that was, and of course one more question on chemical injury. I think this everybody knows, that which is more dangerous, alkali or acid? It's always the alkali. Why not acid, all of you? Because that forms, that coagulates the proteins and that forms a layer, so the acid cannot go inside. But alkali can easily penetrate and go inside and cause more damage. That is why, please remember, this is another important question, that alkali is more dangerous than acid, more dangerous than acid. Right. Okay. So once we know this, we next talk about is your next question. Again, recently asked question, I know, but apart from anisometropia, what is anisometropia? Difference of refractive power between the two eyes of more than 2.5 diopters. So how much difference? More than 2.5 diopters. Do you all remember I have talked about 2.5 so many times? What were the points to remember in 2.5? That infant is hypermetropic by 2.5 to 3 diopters. What was another 2.5? If you measure from the limbus, 2.5 millimeters pars plicata, which helps us to do the cyclotherapy where we are damaging the ciliary processes and absolute glaucoma. Remember? Another 2.5, 2.4 or 2.5 is your depth of anterior chamber, right? So, we have learnt many 2.5s here, right? So, yeah, anterior chamber depth, sky, it is anterior chamber depth, isn't it? So, here we will remember about the definition of anisometropia. So, if I talk about very quickly with you all, anisometropia is one, then myopia, hypermetropia, astigmatism. What was the one more refractive error we have learned? Let's also revise that. What is aniseikonia? What was that? What is aniseikonia? It is difference of image size and difference of, sorry, it is difference of image size. Normally also we have a difference of image size. Do you all remember that? What is that physiological value? Physiologically we all have a difference of 5%. So, anything more than 5% is what we call aniseikonia. We are seeing it through echinometer, and how do you treat? We treat it with conic glasses, है ना? Isoconic glass. NIC के बदले isoconic क्या होता है? When you are enlarging the smaller image, these are isoconic glasses. So, I know you all will remember myopia, hypermetropia, astigmatism, anisometropia, but the fifth, this one also you should remember, right? And everybody remembers we have discussed this, that 5% of image difference helps us in depth perception. ठीक है ना? That is why we all have that depth perception, right? And everybody knows about myopia, hypermetropia. I don't think we have to revise this. Myopia is more power. Whatever you required, it is more than that. Therefore, the light rays are focused in front of the retina, and hence for myopia we are using concave lenses, right? So, eye is large, M for M, power is more. So, the light rays are for focus in front, and therefore, you need to use concave lenses to, so that the focusing is on the retina. And what did we learn? Let's quickly revise hypermetropia. Hypermetropia is just the opposite. This time the eye is small, and therefore, when the eye is small and this is less power, that means the focusing will not happen even behind till it reaches the retina, it happens behind the retina. And therefore, we have to this time increase the power with the convex lens, and the focus will be on the retina. So, this basic should be absolutely clear. And what was astigmatism? We have learned that when the power between the two axes is different, one is more curved than the other, any one can be more curved. So, any of difference of refractive power between the two principal axes, this is what is astigmatism. Answer here will be difference B, that is difference in refractive error. Okay. So, this was next question, right? We have done this, we come to the next one. Again, this has been your NICT question, that means you should know the action of all the muscles very nicely. They can ask you something else as well. How have we learned the action of muscles? Let's first come to this, then we will go back to the question. I have taught you to divide it into horizontal and vertical, isn't it? So, when you say horizontal muscles, it's very simple: medial rectus, lateral rectus, medial rectus adduction, lateral rectus abduction, right? When you talk about vertical, we learn a mnemonic is and rad. What is this? Superiors are in tortoise, rad says recti are adductors. If we know this properly, it's easy to learn one by one. If it is what did I say? Kaise learn karna? How do you have to learn this? You have to understand that adduction, abduction are mainly the action of horizontal. For vertical muscles, these are always tertiary actions. And understand this way, most important, little less important, and least important. This is enough. Okay, so if it is mainly tertiary action and recti are adductors, therefore here we write adduction, and obliques are abductors, abduction, abduction. And then of course it becomes very easy. Superior rectors, it is elevation, primary, and secondary would be, superiors are what? Intortus. Similarly for inferior rectors, it becomes opposite. Inferior rectors क्या होगा? Depression, extortus. Superior oblique, always in oblique, the primary action is torsional. And if it is torsional, here what we write is intorsion, and oblique है, उल्टा काम करेगा. Instead of superior, oblique will always depress, and you know why, right? And inferior oblique will, it is inserting behind the equator temporally. This is your superior oblique, and inferior oblique का क्या याद करोगे? That is just the opposite. Extorsion, elevation, abduction. Right? So you all remember this. Elevation is also called circumversion, and depression is also called deusubversion. So if you have revised this action of muscles with me, we can go back to the question, and of course, which except not a function of, we know the answer here is adduction. Yes, you all have answered nicely. So the questions, what you have to understand here, that please be very thorough with your basics of action of muscles. And any other muscle can also be asked in the exam. Now we come to next question. Next question says he is a type 2 diabetes, right? With angiography reveal the following. Look at the angiography. What can you see here? I can see all hyperfluorescent dots. These are what? Microaneurysms. So if it is a microaneurysm, guys, only microaneurysm is very mild. ETDRS classification says very mild non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy, isn't it? So it's a very mild NPDR. Therefore, answer becomes very nice. Subra, this is wait and watch. Right? So in very mild, so can we revise both old and new classification of diabetic retinopathy? So important, always asked. Old is also very important. Don't think we don't have to learn, because if you know this, you know everything. So when you say background, it is some level of hypoxia. More hypoxia is pre-proliferative, maximum hypoxia is proliferative. When you say background, what are the features? We then learn microaneurysms and edema and exudates and hemorrhages. Whereas in pre-proliferative, apart from all the features of the BDR, you get more number of cotton wool spots, large blot hemorrhages, looping and beading of the vessels and capillaries, and what else you get is IRMA. What is IRMA? Intraretinal microvascular abnormalities. These are shunt vessels. When you say proliferative, now all the feature of pre-proliferative with neovascularization, which can be NVD or NVE, right? Can we see this? Okay. So once we know this, we will revise the ETDRS. ETDRS is divided into NPDR and PDR. And NPDR, so this is, please, this is one of the very, retina itself is a very important topic for this exam, and diabetic retinopathy, you must have attended the test, you know how many questions have been included there. Just to give you an idea how important this topic is. You have to learn everything in and out about it. So when you say non-proliferative, very mild, there are only microaneurysms, isn't it? And there was one more question here. Which layer do you see the microaneurysms? You will answer nerve fiber layer. When you talk about mild, what are the features in mild? You will say all the features of background diabetic retinopathy. What about moderate? Moderate is all the features of pre-proliferative. And what is severe and very severe? What did we learn? Revise with me. 4:2:1 rule. If there is single criteria of 4:2:1 rule, this is severe. If more than one criteria of 4:2:1 rule, now this becomes very severe. All of you, do you all remember what is 4? And of course, then we talk about here PDR, proliferative can be mild to moderate, high risk or advanced eye disease. Now, what is the question asked? 4:2:1 rule. Everybody revise with me. What was that? I'll write here. 4 means either hemorrhages and microaneurysms in all the 4 quadrants, or 2 में क्या है? Looping of capillaries in any 2 quadrant, and 1 is IRMA in any 1 quadrant. We have done this so many times. So I hope you have revised this, right? So please revise this. I am writing it again. 4:2:1 rule is important. Q. Which layer? This is also another Q, right? So that was about this question. So we have answered here wait and watch, because these are only microaneurysms that I can see on the fundus fluorescein angiography. Come to the next one. Falling instrument is used to measure. Everybody knows we are looking at what? This is your exophthalmometer. Mainly it is a Hertel's exophthalmometer. And therefore, what should be the answer? Proptosis. Simple. How do you define proptosis? Distance from lateral orbital to apex of cornea more than 21 millimeters, or difference between two eyes of more than 2 millimeters. Both are called, either this or this is called proptosis. How to identify microaneurysms? So, you have another question where it is asked, how do you identify microaneurysm in this test itself, Sky? So, you remember what we have answered? It is what, how do you see it? Look at this one. When you have put a dye in the blood vessel which has reached there, can you see this white, which is looking like a white, all filled, these blood vessels are filled with the dye, right? Now, this, can you see the leakage now? Either there is no leakage or these are the different leakages. If it is normal, no leakage, everything would be just inside the blood vessel. But here it's all leaking, and this is what is microaneurysms. कैसे दिखा Sky? Hyperfluorescent. So, whenever we are studying a fluorescein angiography, we are looking in terms of hyper hai ki hypo hai. Is it, can I see the fluorescence more, that is leakage in case of microaneurysms, or it is blocked, right? So, just revise my videos on fluorescein angiography, you will understand. So, here what we are going to answer is hyperfluorescent dots. ठीक है? Okay, we come to the next one. So, see, have a look. So, this is how we are, this patient we are using this Hertel's exophthalmometer, and I told you what is the distance criteria, when do we define it as proptosis, right. So, Hertel's exophthalmometer, generally please remember this is important. In adults we are using this. What do you use in children? We answer Lutz, and if it is a non-axial, it is not protruding in the straight eye, one extra information, it is called Nogle's. Nogle's exophthalmometer. And apart from exophthalmometer, how can we examine it? This is on examination. Everybody remembers, you are standing behind the patient, you elevate the chin. If one eye is protruded, it will appear first than the other. This is what is called Nafziger's test or Nafziger's sign. So, we will not forget this. This has been asked. And another clinical, if I am looking from the front, what is that view called? This is called Worm's view. And here, how do you see? You see in this patient, her right eye is proptosed. Okay, in this patient, it is the right eye which is proptosed. Okay? Okay. So, that was about this question. We come to the next question. It says sudden but bilateral painless loss of vision is due to. Now, these are the options in front of us. What should we answer? Tell me. Yes. So, if it is keratoconus, it cannot be sudden. Keratoconus is not sudden, first of all. Yes, there is painless and there is loss of vision due to the astigmatism, but it is not sudden. Acute congestive glaucoma is not painless, right? And this is also painful. This is also painful and it is not painless. So, our answer is C, that is diabetic retinopathy. Right, guys? So, here our answer becomes DR, that is diabetic retinopathy. Had it been not sudden, what could be the main cause of progressive? This has also been your exam question from the same exam, that a progressive loss of vision in a diabetic patient is due to, so, and the options that were given, there was diabetic cataract. So, yes, please do not forget, we do not have to always think about retinopathy in a diabetic patient. He may be having some diabetic cataract, and that is also a reason of diminution of vision. But again, that cannot be sudden. Okay, so when you talk about the DR, just have a look on these slides. We have just learned the classification about hemorrhages and exudates. You should be able to recognize this. Okay, that is why I am revising this, because they have asked you what are hard exudates, what are soft exudates on the slides. So, these are the hard exudates, which are nothing but, we remember this, leaked lipids. So, these are the leaked lipids, these are hard exudates, right? And this is what is your dot and dot hemorrhages. These are the blot hemorrhages and these are the flame shaped hemorrhage. What is the next thing that we will revise in this? Again flame shaped hard exudates. And what are soft exudates? These are cotton wool spots. They look like cotton wool spots. Okay. So yes, very nice question, Sky. Is diabetic retinopathy sudden? It can only be sudden if there is some hemorrhage which has blocked the view, okay, or it can be mainly towards advanced stage of diabetic retinopathy. Actually, if I look at this question, I am not very happy with the question, but I could have changed the option and asked you in the test. I didn't do that because I wanted to discuss it. What I want to discuss, that somehow if you are stuck in this situation, we have to look at which is the best among the four. So, best among the four, Sky, is diabetic retinopathy, but yes, generally it is only in advanced case when there is a sudden vitreous hemorrhage that you can get a sudden painless loss of vision. So, this goes more, my mind goes more towards advanced stage with vitreous hemorrhage. So, if you talk about your hard exudates are leak lipids, right? And what are soft exudates? Soft exudates are your cotton wool spots are dead axons, right? So, if soft exudates are nothing but dead axons, we are talking about which layer? Mainly nerve fiber layer, okay? Hard exudates generally outer, so these are leakage from the capillaries. What have you learned with me? I have made the diagram of the retina so many times for you all. Outer plexiform layer, that it starts with retinal pigment epithelium, layer of rods and cones, right? If you remember that diagram, where are the blood vessels in the retina? OP and IN layer, nerve fiber layer. These are the two places. So, any blood vessel which is along the nerve fiber layer, when there is a bleeding in that, that leads to flame shaped hemorrhage. That is bleeding at the nerve fiber layer, these are superficial or flame shaped hemorrhage. And dot and blot will be mainly between OP and IN layer, between the OP and IN layer where the blood vessels are vertical, isn't it? So, OP IN layer के बीच में dot and blot and NFL में your flame shaped hemorrhage. ठीक है? Now, when you look at this one, what do you think you are looking at with stage? We are just looking at some fundus pictures here. Which stage are we looking at? So, we are seeing the pre-proliferative stage. This is your pre-proliferative stage. Why? Look at the number of cotton wool spots. Look at these large blot hemorrhages here, large blot hemorrhage here, right? And I can see these are the flame shaped and so many cotton wool spots. So, when the number of cotton wool spots are increasing, it is telling you more hypoxia, or agar more hypoxia, naturally this is pre-proliferative. What do we see here? What is this? Tell me. This one. This is your, we have learned this. This is what is looping. You know? These are the looping of blood vessels. So, looping is again a feature of pre-proliferative stage. Let us have a look at some other slides. This is the basic, which is background diabetic retinopathy. Then it becomes pre-proliferative, and now I am showing you the proliferative stage. Here what you are looking at, this is your NVD, that is neovascularization at the disc, and here this is NVE, that is neovascularization elsewhere. Okay. We next talk about is your next question. Have a look at this question. 21-year-old boxer is wanting to improve the. So, when you are talking of contact sports, which of the following surgery is indicated or contraindicated? Which of the following surgeries indicated should be there? चलो दोनों चीज डिस्कस कर लेते हैं, indicated or contraindicated. But can you tell me what is indicated if I want to discuss this one? Among all RK, PRK, LASIK, SMILE, which one should be the choice of refractive surgery if the person is a boxer or he is into some contact sports, wrestling, boxing and so on. So, think yourself, do we know what is RK first of all? What is RK? Okay, so because there has been some difference in my opinion, I thought I am asking you indicated, it is written contraindicated. I will discuss both the things. First I am talking about indicated. Indicated may which one you think, now you think afresh with me and tell me RK, PRK, LASIK, SMILE, which one should be chosen for a contact sports? What should be the answer? Answer should be your PRK. Though this is an older procedure, not commonly done, but yes, this should be the answer. Why? Let us discuss. First of all is RK. RK is what? Radial keratotomy. You can see it here. We are giving peripheral cuts like this, leaving the central optical zone. What happens? We are making this whole area very loose or weak. So, the periphery is bulging and center is flattening. So, you are treating myopia here. This is clear. What is RK? Can you think of something here? If I am giving multiple cuts in the cornea, any impact in the eye, this can actually almost give way, isn't it? So, it is very, very risky. So, if the question was contraindicated, I would mark RK. And if it is which one you have to choose, now think, RK I cannot choose. LASIK and SMILE, one of you have said SMILE. LASIK and SMILE are the surgeries where, what is LASIK? We are raising a flap, right? We are raising a flap, then putting the laser and sculpting it and putting the flap back. There is always a risk of loss of flap, avulsion of the flap. So, we will not do this surgery in contact sports. Okay? Okay. SMILE. Again in SMILE, what you are doing? You are not raising a flap, but you are mainly what you are doing? You are dealing with the deeper stroma, cutting a piece of it, taking the lenticle out from a small incision. This is what is SMILE. So, everybody remembers this? What is SMILE? It is done by femtolaser. Femtolaser is applied on the stroma. It will cut a piece of the corneal stroma and whatever is needed according to a need, and then with a small incision you are taking it out. So, yes, it is a flapless surgery. We can go for it, but I am not saying SMILE is totally wrong option, but if PRK is given, we have to first choose PRK. PRK, we are not doing anything with the stroma as such, dealing with this, except that we are first removing the epithelium, dealing with superficial stroma to sculpt it, and then bandaging the eye, and the epithelium grows over it. Okay? So, if SMILE and PRK are given, we should answer PRK as a choice of indication for contact sports. Okay? If PRK is not given, you can answer SMILE, because SMILE is also a flapless surgery. SMILE is what? Small incision lenticule extraction. It stands for small incision lenticule extraction. Whenever there is only removal of epithelium, either through the alcohol or through whatever medium, and then applying it on the stroma and then bandaging, jaise isme tha, then we will always prefer those procedures better. Right? Epi-LASIK also, we do raise a very, very thin epithelial flap and then we put down the flap, isn't it? So, again, this is a type of a flap surgery. That is why PRK should be chosen always first. So, if PRK is in the option, there is no confusion, just mark PRK. We come to which is not present in inner segment of photoreceptors. I do not know if this is an exact ophtha question also or not, but yes, structure of photoreceptors, we all know outer and inner segment. If we go back to the structure, we know that the disc membranes are always present in the outer segment of the rods and cones, isn't it? And inner segment has the cell bodies, and any cell body will have all these Golgi apparatus and endoplasmic reticulum. Hence, our answer will become D. Simple? Yeah. So, you just have to be familiar with the structure. And of course, everybody knows that there is a process of hyperpolarization, because of which the visual cycle, just revise your visual cycle, okay, how this hyperpolarization is causing the impulse to travel. Next, we are again back. I think Sky, this was the question I was mentioning to, angiographic picture of microaneurysm in diabetic retinopathy. So, what is the angiographic picture? Hyperfluorescent dots. We just see more of it. These are the microaneurysms which will be present as hyperfluorescent dots. Yes, right? Yeah. So, again the same. I wanted to show you something else in this, that is why I have repeated the slide. See, if I just said hypo and hyper. Now, have a look. These black dots, these are hypo. Can you see this? This is hypo. Here I can see here, this is hypo. And this one is hyper, right? That is hyper. Hyper, I think you are clear. So, hypo kya hota hai? When it could be a blocked fluorescence, or it could be due to any capillary blockage. Blocked fluorescence matlab some hemorrhage or exudate is present and you can't look behind. It is blocking your view. That is what is called blocked fluorescence. Okay. So, I wanted to show you what is hypo here. Yeah, right. We come to the next question. A child with 1400 gram was brought to the ophthalmology department with leukocoria and calcifications. He had a history of 34 weeks prematurity. What is the probable diagnosis? See, when again the history keeps us our mind towards ROP, but then suddenly there is leukocoria with calcification and a mass with calcification. How can it be a ROP? In that case, what do you answer? Yes, answer will be retinoblastoma. I'll just answer you, Sky. So this is what is leukocoria. All of you, please just revise the differential diagnosis of leukocoria. क्या क्या होता है? Think with me. A small child with a white eye reflex. What are the things you have to think along? Congenital cataract or glaucoma? Cataract. Congenital cataract, cyclitic membrane, fungal endophthalmitis. It could be central choroiditis, it could be central colobomas, it could be ROP, Coats disease, PHPV, right? So, all these can be differential diagnosis of leukocoria, and all these collectively are known as, padhaya tha na, pseudogliomas. So, one causes retinoblastoma and all these are called pseudogliomas, right. So, leukocoria becomes very important, and retinoblastoma, of course, see any intraocular mass with these are the calcifications. If there are calcified deposits, you are looking at ultrasound B scan, we have to answer in this case retinoblastoma. Okay. So, maybe the presentation of the question was to just mess your mind up there. So, but if you had been alert, you would answer this. Okay. Another important thing is, please remember your what is the most common age of presentation? It is 18 months. Then most common mode of presentation is leukocoria. Then what is the most common mode of spread? You have learnt with me. Mode of spread is through the optic nerve, isn't it? And then another question is most common non-ocular malignancy in retinoblastoma. So, non-ocular malignancy you will answer osteosarcoma, right. So, this is osteosarcoma, right. So, please learn your retinoblastoma very, very nicely. Yes, now tell me, Sky, what were you saying about what black? This black patch, are you talking about the whole of this thing that you want to know? So, if you have learnt listen to me in the video, I have talked about this, that any normal fluorescein angiography, if you look at, you will get this. It is absolutely normal. Why? Because of two reasons you are getting a dark area here. One, it's an avascular zone. Okay. So, foveal avascular zone with no capillaries, naturally no angiographic fluorescence, right. Secondly, okay, it was an avascular zone, but what about the background choroid? That should have been shining, na? Why it is dark? Because there are a lot of pigments, melanins, xanthophyll pigments. So, what happens? They block the choroidal fluorescence. Because of these two reasons, this is what you get as a central dark area, and this is considered absolutely normal. So, all the topics that we are discussing in this test, please make it a point that you have to learn everything in and around these PYTs. Okay. What is seen in macular corneal dystrophy? So, this was asked, everybody knows what is macular. Which dystrophy is this? This is nebular. Can you see nebula? I can see the iris details, I can see the pupillary margin, right. So, this becomes your nebular dystrophy. Corneal opacity I am talking about, I am very sorry. Dystrophy. Please correct the question, it is opacity. Yeah. Anyway, the options were too obvious that you wouldn't have made a mistake. So, this is your nebular corneal opacity. Look at this one. This is your macular. We can see the pupillary margin in a macular corneal opacity. What we can't see is the iris details, isn't it? Yeah. And if you look at through the leucoma, nothing is seen. This is your leucoma. I think now it's absolutely clear. These are the three types of corneal opacity. So, what should you answer here? Only pupillary margin is visible, right. So, this becomes the answer. So, now it's clear with these slides. Nebular, you can see both, macular, only pupillary margin, and leucoma, nothing is seen. Okay. There is one more important exam question, everybody knows that question. So many times discussed about the corneal opacity, that suppose this is your cornea, and we come back to what I was trying to say. Let's focus back to your corneal opacities we were talking about. So, if you look at the corneal opacities, what we have to keep in mind, that if it is a leucoma and it is a nebula, which one will, suppose there is a nebula here and one is leucoma, what have I taught you? Which one is going to lead to more diminution of vision? Both are peripheral if suppose. It is mainly the nebula. Keep that in mind. Why? Because it will diffract light. Because it diffracts light, it is going to affect even the normal cornea, whereas a leucoma just obstructs light. Yes, all of you are clear with this, na? Very good. Yes, you all have answered correctly, so you know this question. These are the only two questions around opacity that has been asked ever in any exam. We come to the next question is ectodermal in origin is, yeah, this is my little bit my question, not exactly your PYQ, but I think, can you think about this? Ectodermal in origin is all except, all are ectodermal? What have you answered in this? Ectodermal in origin is all except. So, Som Subhra, you are now into my trap. So, that is why I framed this question like this. Ectodermal in origin. Lens develops from what? Surface ectoderm. Iris, dilator pupillary, iris sphincter, secondary vitreous, neuroectoderm. It is the blood vessels which is mesoderm. So, now what is the answer? I know you all were answering so easily, all those PYQs I have just given as such. You all have listened to it and you have answered. Now, you have to think afresh in between, okay. So, here what will be the answer? It is blood vessels. Yes, Sejal, it is E, isn't it? So, we have to know about the origins, different origins, whether it is surface ectoderm, neural crest or mesoderm. Okay, why it is important? Because it is asked in your exam as a direct question. So, if you remember back to my lectures, structures derived for surface ectoderm, we learn it with what is the mnemonic? Sleek with double L and double E, K is kuch nahi. So, S is mainly skin appendages, then what else develops from surface ectoderm? Skin of eyelids and appendages, lens, lacrimal gland, epithelial lining of cornea, epithelial lining of conjunctiva. Among this, which is the question I have told you so many times, it is the lens. Let's keep revising. What are the structures from neuroectoderm? Storm with an E, S-T-O-R-M-E. So, ST is secondary and tertiary vitreous, we just discussed. This is asked. O for optic nerve, R for retina is obvious. The neuroectoderm, these are neural tissue. M is smooth muscles, that is iris sphincter and dilator pupillae. This is also asked. And E stands for epithelial lining of iris and ciliary body. Right? Third, we come to neural crest. Neural part, myelin sheath. Neural part of neural crest, myelin sheath and ciliary ganglia. Mesenchymal part, just remember neural crest, all the coverings, sclera except the temporal, temporal is developing from mesoderm, then all the coverings make choroid, corneal stroma, corneal endothelium. Corneal stroma, corneal endothelium again is your exam question. And ciliary muscles again, neural crest, trabecular meshwork, stroma of ciliary body, iris and orbital bone. Don't mug it up. If you are going to read it again and again, you will understand. So, neural crest mainly all the coverings. We next talk about the structures derived from mesoderm. It is PSME, PSM with an E, right. So, it is your primary vitreous, temporal sclera, extraocular muscles and endothelial blood lining of vessels. So, this is all very factual. So, we will move ahead. Come to the next one. Behçet's disease presents with. So, Behçet's disease presents with. We all know it's non-granulomatous panuveitis. Behçet's is what? Do you all remember Behçet's very quickly? It's an autoimmune disease and it's an obliterative vasculitis due to circulating immune complexes. You have ulcers in the mouth, genital ulcers, positive skin test and eye involvement. Now, what is it also called? Transient hypopyon syndrome. This is your important exam question. Okay. Second question is on HLA association. Both B5 and B51 are correct. If both are given, we answer B5. Okay. Yes. So, just remember these are important points about Behçet's. It's a non-granulomatous panuveitis. Okay, guys? Yeah. Transient hypopyon. So, have a look. This is what is your venous sheathing. That is seen here. I can see the venous sheathing. Have a look. Can you see this? Yeah. And of course, this is the hypopyon. We are looking at transient. So, it is a transient because it causes recurrent hypopyon. So, it presents as recurrent hypopyon. This is what is transient hypopyon syndrome and this is your venous sheathing. Right. We come to the next. The following shows what? I think this is very, very simple to you all. we are looking through cobalt light, cobalt blue, and what is seen is this green fluorescein dye. So, here the answer becomes cobalt blue and fluorescein stain, which is staining the corneal ulcer. I think this is quite simple. There is nothing big about this. You know this, isn't it? What is the process or method of fluorescence? You should know how a lower wavelength of light is falling and it is emitting a longer wavelength of light, right? Yeah. Then we have to, so a shorter wavelength, I shouldn't say lower, I meant shorter wavelength of light is shown and it is emitting a longer wavelength of light. So, this is the property of fluorescence. We are going towards physics here. Just remember how normally we do, we are generally stain the ulcer with the fluorescein and through cobalt blue light. We next talk about this one I have included to discuss with you. We all remember Rose Bengal and Lysamine green. This was also one of your questions in INICET, that which one you will use more. Practically, because routinely we will, of course, these two dyes, Rose Bengal and your Lysamine, will always stain dead cells and mucus. First, you should be clear about this. So, it stains the dead cells and mucus. Mainly, therefore, it is used for dry eye. But in dry eye, we have to also see some changes affecting the cornea, or we have to do a BUT test, isn't it? Then also I need fluorescein. So, if they ask you the sequence, I have told you so many times. Practically, if the patient comes to my OPD, my first thing, why will I waste time into anything? I will start with fluorescein. Then next is Lysamine green. Why? Because your Rose Bengal stings a lot. But theoretically, if you are staining for a dry eye and trying to see the dead and mucus cells, then Lysamine green becomes first. Okay. So, it is still a very confusing what intention the examiner had asked that question and what should be answered, because if we think in one way, fluorescein should be first. If we think in other way, Lysamine green should be first. But I think because let us go more towards practical, then we should answer fluorescein. So, when you talk about the base of the ulcer sky you just mentioned, so let me tell you, this we learn in dendritic ulcers, in herpetic ulcer. If you look at the dendritic ulcer staining, the margins are stained with Rose Bengal and the base with the fluorescein, because fluorescein will stain a denuded epithelium and the margins have Rose Bengal. That means white is staining, taking a Rose Bengal stain because they are virus laden dead cells at the margin. Otherwise, you simply have to say that any ulcer area, any denuded epithelium will stain with fluorescein. ठीक है ना? I think this is clear. So, question of base and margin comes with dendritic ulcer sky. Okay. So, this was also your PYQ. Look at the slide here. What I see is there is a definitely there is a proptosis. Can I see that proptosis? Yeah. Okay. Now, I will read the question for you all. He is a 35-year-old male patient with decreased vision, proptosis and fever. There was a history of recurrent sinusitis. I think a very recent question, I think NEET PG, which sinusitis is most common cause for your this orbital cellulitis? It is ethmoidal. Let me first remind you this. This is one question. Anyway, CT is in front of you. What is the most probable diagnosis? One by one. Is it preseptal? Preseptal cellulitis will not present with proptosis. Do you all remember, I have taught you what is an orbital septum, and again will explain in a most basic way. This is the upper lid, this is the lower lid. The posterior margin of the tarsal plate here, and this is the bone, there is a gap. Same here. Wherever the tarsal plate ends and this is the bone, there is a gap. And this gap is filled with a thin connective tissue which is called orbital septum. It is acting like a wall of the orbit. Anything in front of the septum, like any insect bite around the lids, is preseptal. I am not much bothered about that. But anything behind the septum is what is orbital cellulitis, where orbital cavity is being involved. So, it is only when something is in the orbit that it will push the eyeball out, causing proptosis. Therefore, preseptal cannot be the correct answer. Now, I think there has always been a debate and confusion between orbital cellulitis and subperiosteal abscess. What you all have answered here? All of you? See, this is how a subperiosteal abscess will look like. Okay? And so, now the thing will depend not only on history, but whatever image has been given to you. If the image has been this, then what is the answer? Subperiosteal, but the image is this one. Therefore, our answer becomes your orbital cellulitis with sinusitis. Yes. Okay, and remember it is most commonly your ethmoidal. So once you know this and these options are given, you definitely should have the idea of Chandler's classification, where these are the different gradings, where first is preseptal, then orbital, then abscess formation, then intraorbital abscess, and cavernous sinus thrombosis is the last. We have learned this so many times that orbital cellulitis is an emergency because of the risk of cavernous sinus thrombosis. So see, this is very nicely depicted. I found this and I found it very useful for Chandler's classification. So if this line is actually your orbital septum, isn't it? So what do you see? Anything in front is preseptal. Anything behind here, the red part is the one. Here this becomes your orbital cellulitis. This is the cellulitis. Now what is happening? Pus collection and abscess formation, which can involve the whole orbit, and finally the thrombosis. Okay? So now we are clear and we will not make a mistake. We next talk about is, so we come to this one. How do you solve this? Is it with the rule or against the rule? Everybody remembers what is with the rule? When vertical is more than horizontal, when this is more, we call it with the rule astigmatism, and just the opposite is against the rule. So this is the what you have to answer here. So whenever such a question comes, when you have got this prescription, you first change it into retinoscopic reading. So minus 1 sphere means minus 1 here, minus 1 here. I am doing it very slowly, just understand. Minus 1 sphere is minus 190, minus 1, 180. Minus 2 at 180. Minus 2 at 180 means this time where will be the power? Everybody knows axis is mentioned opposite. So 180 लिखा है तो मैं minus 2 को 90 पे रखूंगी. So now what is my actual retinoscopic reading is minus 3, minus 1. And if you agree with this, now you know minus is more power. Please be very clear. When I say minus 3, what is the power of your refractive power of the eye? 60 plus 3. And what is minus 1? 60 plus 1. So hence the answer will be with the rule astigmatism. Clear? Right. So a quick revision here, that how it is the multiple focal points in astigmatism. And when you say what is simple myopic and how do you revise this? Simple myopic means, simple myopic is one axis is 0 and there is a minus. Simple hypermetropic, 1 is plus, 1 is 0. Compound myopic means both are minus. Compound hypermetropic, both are plus. And if one axis is plus, one minus, this is called mixed astigmatism. We know this very well, isn't it? So in this case, what type it will be according to this classification? It is both minus 3, minus 1. So it's a compound myopic, isn't it? So we should know this, that this is actually a compound myopic astigmatism. Right? And another way of dividing astigmatism, if both axes are at 90 and 180 with perpendicular to each other, this one is called regular. Again, this one is also called regular. If they are still perpendicular to each other but not at 90 and 180, it is oblique astigmatism. And this is less than 90 degree, therefore this is bi-oblique astigmatism. So that's another way of classifying. And come to the last way of classifying, this is normal, this is regular and this is irregular. How? Let's put it this way. When I say minus 2, it means minus 2 in all the axes. This is what is mean by regular, same in the whole axis. But if there is so much irregularity in the cornea that even in the single axis there is a variation, now this is what is called irregular astigmatism. So this is how you will understand the different types of astigmatism. ठीक है? Okay. So this is with the rule, men. Why do you call it with the rule? If you understand that, again I am reminding you, due to the pressure of the lids, normally also there can be mild increase in your vertical than horizontal. Very mild in a normal case. So if that is augmented, we call it with the rule. Therefore, when vertical is more, we always call it with the rule. Okay, so when vertical is more than horizontal, this is with the rule, making again for you all. And if horizontal is more than vertical, this is your against the rule. Please be very clear about this. Right, great. So that was about this question. Chalo, we come to the, I think phenylephrine test, I think day before yesterday I posted an Insta also on this. So phenylephrine test, just remember there is always some diagnostic confusion between flectennular, nodular episcleritis, nodular scleritis. Nodular scleritis will be more painful, tender and a serious thing than episcleritis, and of course flectennular conjunctivitis is least serious among the three. Okay, interesting thing, do you know? We treat it almost the same way, almost here and there. But of course, if it's a scleritis, we may need some oral medications. But in all the three, we are putting steroids. Anyway, so how to differentiate? Give 1% phenylephrine. If it is blanching, it is flectennular. If it is not blanching, increase to 10%. After 10%, if it is blanching, it is nodular episcleritis. Yes, all of you, correct, Sejal. So, Shubhra, we have to answer A. And even then it doesn't blanch, that means the deep episcleral plexus is involved, and now our answer will be, what will be our answer? Then we will say it is your, scleritis. Then we call it, then this is your scleritis, right? Okay. So that was simple. We come to, has been your exam question. I think this test is so simple and so many times revised, it should be very, very clear to you all. We next talk about is, which of the following lenses used in direct gonioscope? What is direct? When we are not seeing through reflected light. What is indirect? When we are seeing through a reflected light. Now, don't mug it up. Practically, if I am looking at the patient in indirect, whatever I am seeing above is actually the lower angle. Whatever I am seeing lower is actually the upper angle. This is what it means. It's all inverted, laterally inverted or this way inverted. So, direct I will try to use when I am doing some procedures like goniotomy, trabeculectomy. I want a direct gonio lens, isn't it? So, in a direct gonio lens, if I am looking especially for the goniotomy, we use it. Which one is direct? You are now this you have to learn. It's factual, and of course everybody knows the answer is scopes. Yeah. ठीक है? So we will revise this with this chart once more. Indirect में Goldman आता है, Zeiss, Sussman and Posner-Ridge. I think Goldman Zeiss should be remembered as in the exam. Direct is Cope and Swan-Jacob. ठीक है? Yeah. Some important ones I have. Yes, Richardson and Cope are both, if Richardson is given in your option, last moment this was changed not to cause confusion, but in your PYQ, it was more than one answer was correct. So, this is also direct and this is also direct. Thank you for mentioning it. Okay? Okay. And all of you, of course, let's also discuss a few more questions here on gonioscopy. This was an NICT question, which investigation will not require dilatation of pupil? We all know we need a constricted pupil. We are working on the angle. So, remember this one question does not require dilatation of pupil. And another question they have asked you around this again in NICT is about the critical angle of cornea. Do you all know the critical angle of cornea is 46 degrees? Isn't it? Another thing they have asked you is how the gonio lens is working. I hope you know the principle. I have explained you so many times. Normally, there is total internal reflection. You can't see the angle structures. But when you put a gonio lens, you have made the outer part, now this is more denser because the gonio lens will be more than, more than the refractive index of the air or the, therefore, now it is more denser, no internal reflection, and therefore you are able to see the structures. So, this is the principle of using a gonio lens and how we are able to visualize the structures. Is that clear? Yeah. Okay. So, once we know this question is like a surprise element, and don't bother about surprises. I have told my students so many times that ma'am, ye wala question. So, you are supposed to keep preparing the way you are. You will get some shocks in between, especially from NICT. You should know these shocks are for all of us. It's a surprise not only for you. Okay. So, it won't impact your result. Anyway, what is this? So, this was marked structure here. The arrow is showing you a space. So, this becomes, if this is the lens and this is the iris, this is pre-equatorial zonule, this is the post and this is the hyaloid. Any space between the post and the hyaloid, this is what is called, yes, this is canal of Petit. Yes. And what is canal of Hanover? Can we mark it here? What was canal of Hanover? This one. This space I am marking in green. So, this space between pre and post is canal of Hanover. Pre-equatorial and post-equatorial zonule. Okay. I will show you another diagram, it will be more clear. So, look at this one. Now, if this is equatorial means equator of the lens we are talking about, this is the iris. So, this becomes pre-equatorial zone, the green line, and the other green line, this becomes your post-equatorial, right? And what is this red? This is the hyaloid zonule. So, any space between the post and the hyaloid zonule is what is your post, and hyaloid zonule is your canal of Pettit, right? So, this becomes your canal of Pettit. This is the post hyaloid. And between pre and post equatorial, if you see here, this is what is canal of Hanover, this area, this one.